And good mid-August Saturday to both of you.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Good morning. How are you?
Better now that I'm speaking with both of you gentlemen. And we've got State Representative Russ Diamond coming up at the bottom of the hour to address the $12.8 million in COVID relief funds that have been agreed to between the Wolf administration, particularly Governor Wolf, and Lebanon County. 2.8 million of which we'll have a great discussion on coming up at 11:30. But gentlemen, as we took a best of show last week, everybody was on special assignment. So now that everybody is rested, recuperated, it seems like the world of politics took that very same week off and then began on Monday with major news, and then the rest of the week developed as it did, and major news developed throughout the week. I would argue that one of the biggest stories of the week was Democrat nominee for President Joe Biden selecting his vice presidential candidate, presumptive nominee, former primary candidate in Kamala Harris. Rob and Carlos, your immediate reactions.
Yeah, I could go first if you like. I thought, on one hand, let's look at it in two ways. On one hand, there's the strategic value of it. I don't understand how this helps the Democrats strategically, because I understand that the number one qualification for them, seeing as how they're a racist party, was that they needed a black woman. Supposedly, David Axelrod wrote in a CNN op-ed that actually Gretchen Whitmer was the first choice of Joe Biden, but he was politely told, shut your mouth, you need to choose a black woman. She's not black, so that doesn't count. But strategically, were there a lot of people interested in race politics that were going to vote for Trump until a black woman was appointed as the VP and thereby prospective president, because Joe Biden has so many mental deficiencies? I don't see how that helps them. I don't think it helps the progressive base, because it was obvious after the debates that the progressive base of the Democratic Party disliked the fact that she was a vindictive prosecutor, not a good law enforcement person, but someone that just went after petty laws, that proceeded to withhold evidence to throw innocent people to jail, went after black parents for the crime of truancy when their kids decided not to go to school, things like that. Now, morally, I think she's reprehensible. She thinks that Joe Biden's a sexual assaulter, and she's more than willing to partner with him. And then lastly, I'll say it is the perfect ticket for the Democratic Party, a party that represents the wealthy elites of this country. Nothing could be better for them to have someone who's basically an empty suit in Joe Biden, and someone in Kamala Harris who has no principles and will be willing to switch at the flip of a hat, or at the flip of a coin, any position that she might hold.
Carlos?
And that last one is the one that I'm most interested in. Who is she? Who is she? Is she the woman, the little girl that was, I guess, her opportunities were held back when she was growing up because of Joe Biden's policies? Is she the woman that was standing firmly with Dr. Ford based on the mere accusations for against Kavanaugh? Who is she? And Americans care about these things. They don't care so much about your race as much as they care about your character and who you are. And the coin of the realm will always be trust. Do I trust you? So, I'm sorry. It's not that she's a woman. It's not that she's, mixed cultured. It's not that she's a Democrat. It's not that she comes from California and her ascent was questionable. It's that we just don't trust you.
And I just want to say real quick, when it comes to, again, imagine just when it comes to issues of race and things like that, and I'm sure we'll get into more of this as the show goes on, but just always put the shoe on the other foot. Imagine that if a major political party would say, our number one criteria for this position, vice president or attorney general or president, is they have to be white. You would be outraged. You'd be like, wait, what? That's absurd. Why would you disqualify potential quality candidates just based on the color of their skin? And I just want to say, for those on the left that might think that that's acceptable, consider this for a moment. I have a lot of negative things to say about Joe Biden, but one thing I don't believe is that Joe Biden's a stark raving racist, as Kamala Harris tried to paint him. I think that there's this huge misrepresentation of the black community that we see often happen where they're supposedly monolithic, or like Joe Biden says, you're not really black if you don't vote for me. Would it shock you to know that black people are just like every other Americans and they're not voting for people just based on their skin color? In fact, during the primaries, Joe Biden, an old white man, had overwhelming black support compared to Kamala Harris, a woman of color. And so like this whole focus on her race thing, it's so bad. It just reeks of desperation, and it reeks of the bigotry of low expectations that so many of these elites have. Like Joe Biden, black folks tended to really like Joe Biden. What's wrong with that? Now, I think there's wrong as far as his policies, but how about that? They weren't concerned about Joe Biden's skin color. So the fact that there now has to be pandering, oh, well, we need someone of color, it's just ludicrous.
Well, the other thing is, if I may interject, Todd, how many states did Kamala Harris win when she was running for president? So,
not to give copyright infringement a pass here, but I think Zippo.
Right, but the overarching point is strategically now. Now, if you're looking at it strategically, I don't know if the DNC really understands their market very well. She didn't win any state. Why would you not pick the smartest person in the room, arguably on either side, Elizabeth Warren? Now, listen, I have huge problems with Elizabeth Warren, but do I have to be a Democrat to understand that she's really intelligent?
Right.
I mean, do I have to be a Democrat to kind of like, when you look at all the candidates standing on their own 2 feet, no one stands as firm as she does. It's so bothersome with respect to Elizabeth Warren because I don't understand why she needed to cheat. I don't understand why she needed to be a Native American or why she had to rely on these things. She doesn't need them. She's the only one that I trust to beat back the fringe left and the progressive left. I mean, I wouldn't put Nancy Pelosi up against the squad. I'd put up Elizabeth Warren, and she would give them a beating.
Well, here's
and right. I mean, intellectually. So why don't you pick that person, someone of that can stand on their own and can make it interesting? The reason why I guess we loved Willie Mays or Hank Aaron is because there was a Willie Mays and a Hank Aaron. It was a competition. It made it interesting. It made politics interesting. When Tulsi Gabbard literally eviscerated Kamala Harris at that speech, when Tulsi Gabbard did this, what do you think the rest of the world is going to do? Forget about Trump.
Yeah.
She's not able. I'm telling you right now, I mean, you guys hear me ad nauseum all the time speak about things and ideas and people that are not able. Kamala Harris is not able. I'm sorry, she's just not able. And there's this thing that she does, this shrill laugh. You know what I'm talking about? When she proposes these ideas and she says these dumb things, and then she laughs, and then everyone like just automatically, naturally laugh along with her. But most people are saying, "Yeah, you're crazy," right? Todd, you're a media person. You see what I'm talking about.
Well, that, and like you mentioned with Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, if you're the Trump campaign, that's going to be the ad of the cycle.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
her own side's taking her apart, and then the Kavanaugh situation, where they're taking things that are made up out of whole cloth and trying
especially
to
against Joe Biden.
Right. There's there's evidence where the accusers need to be believed, and Kamala Harris is out there in front, carrying that banner against Joe Biden, and then turns around and says, well, let's just forget about that, because I want to be a heartbeat away from the presidency.
And this is something Robert talks about, not all the time on his show, and forgive me for taking the time and promoting your show, Robert, but you talk about this all the time. Yes, we're conservatives. We happen to be members of the Republican Party. Yes, we're a little bit whacked out to the letter of the law, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and our love for the, Declaration of Independence. But we certainly do not have the disrespect for Democratic voters like Democratic leaders do. And Rob talks about this all the time, not directly, indirectly. But it's just disrespect. We're going to shove this down your throat because she's a woman of color. What? How does a person that can't afford the position that they're in the inner city, when they're taking care of their kids, and they're living on meager means, how is that a benefit to them, Rob?
Well, I mean, it's not, and that's always the case that we see so much that's occurring, is that we see that Democratic, and I'll criticize the Republicans here in a moment, we see that nationally the Democratic politicians, they think that if they throw red meat out there, they just say, oh, we like you because of your race. Oh, we identify, Hillary Clinton thinks if she talks about putting hot sauce in her purse, that makes her identify with black people. In reality, the way to treat black people with respect is the exact same way to treat everyone with respect. Don't pander to them. Talk about issues they care about. You don't have to pretend to somehow understand what it's like to grow up in their community. You don't have to pander that you have the same cultural beliefs as them. You don't have to do that. And we see this happens, by the way, somewhat on the conservative side as well, where,
yes,
you see Republicans, some that decide that they're going to pretend to know what it's like to be from rural America or to be your average conservative, or, I'm very religious, stout in my religious beliefs, but they don't act like that when it comes to voting, do they? And so it's certainly something that it comes on both sides politically. But, not to get too much,
especially if you only heard of Juneteenth like last week.
Right. Exactly. Which, so not to get too much into Elizabeth Warren, but I'll just say in general, I agree with you that she would have been a better pick, because I do think she's shrewd and intelligent. My thing about Elizabeth Warren, though, is, she's just a wolf in sheep's clothing as well. She's very similar to Kamala, except a better version. In that, in 2016, the Democrats were shocked, I think, the establishment, to see the populist support that Bernie Sanders got. I have a lot of problems with progressivism, but no doubt Bernie was a populist in the same sense that Trump was, just different ideologies of populism that enjoyed them. And so Elizabeth Warren was someone that I believe the establishment Democrats said, we want you to be Bernie light. We want someone that we trust like you, that won't buck the system too much, but you could go out and pay lip service to the progressives. But it's irrelevant what I think. The truth of the matter is, Elizabeth Warren would have inspired the progressive base more than Kamala Harris. There's no doubt in my mind. She would have sounded better on the debate stage. As you alluded to, I mean, everyone, I keep hearing all these...
No question about it.
I keep hearing all these people on the left say, oh man, we don't want to see Trump debate Biden. I wonder why. But I can't wait to see Kamala destroy Mike Pence. I'm not saying Mike Pence is a fantastic debater or anything, but Kamala Harris had the entire media establishment have her back, and they couldn't drag her to the first votes in the primaries because her debate performances were so abhorrent. Perhaps the worst debate performance I've ever seen, barring maybe Bloomberg. Bloomberg was
the worst takedown in the history of debates was the Tulsi Gabbard. She will be forever known as the person that literally beheaded someone in a debate, figuratively. Okay, I mean, it just but here's the thing. I mean, which one of us didn't kind of want to see a debate between Tulsi and Elizabeth Warren? And see, this is where the Democrats hurt themselves way, way back when they wouldn't allow Tulsi on the stage. And now it's happening now with that woman, the Jurgensen woman, right? Is that they don't want to have the independent candidate debate. Debate is good. Am I not correct, Robert?
No, it definitely is.
Okay. I mean, and you know, I wanted to lead you into a real quick, because the congressman's coming up on, or the state representative is coming up at 11:30, but I wanted to lead you into that. Tell me what happened this week, because one of the things that I should tell everybody is that I'm doing the same thing that Dave Rubin is doing this month, and I'm taking a detox, a media detox cleanse.
And you're halfway through, by the way. Thankfully, you're halfway through.
That's right. And I no email, no text, no social media. And then I'm going to have a pretty big announcement on September 1st regarding what I'm going to do about my social media. But so I'm kind of flying blind in a lot of these things, other than the production meeting that we had last night, where we had a little bit of an overview. So everything I'll be reacting to today, I basically haven't heard, because I haven't been on social and really don't know what's going on. And I'm enjoying this digital vacation. But something happened this week in the debate community, and Robert, if you don't know, was one of the top debaters in the country while he was at college, and I dare say is still one of the top debaters politically in the country right now, which is why we love him so. So tell us the story of what happened, and at 11:18, give us an idea what happened.
First off, let me say I was like maybe in the top 120. I was not the elite.
You were in the top.
In case any of them are watching, they'll be like, "Rob, who?" He wasn't.
Yeah,
one
no,
of the
they can
top
come
20.
to me and they can come to me and debate me about how good you were. Okay.
Yeah, so it's just a real quick story, and it's a little bit about my personal life, but I think that it has implications wider. What happened was this. When I started a YouTube channel, understand that a lot of my friends, particularly on Facebook, were from when I was in college. You use Facebook to share evidence when you're in the debate community. The debate community was the radical left. The radical left you see on campuses right now, back in 2013, debate was far more radical than even what you're seeing now. And I'd warned for years, as did many other people that saw what was going on in this community, that sort of critical race theory, everything is racism, denounce whiteness, denounce white privilege, make everything about race, advocating extreme Marxist positions, that would make its way into the mainstream. It has. So I used to just put my YouTube stuff up on Twitter and on YouTube, and then maybe some other outlets like Twitch or DLive. But I started putting it on Facebook as well, and most of my friends and family are respectful. I see stuff on Facebook from left-wing people all the time. I just don't really comment 99% of the time, and we go on being friends. I had someone in the debate community comment.
Like every other human being in the world does, normal people do, to try to avoid, right, putting that relationship at risk.
Right. And I don't mind people that actually have like real criticisms, like I disagree with your position here. That's fine. Absolutely reasonable. Just real quick though, what happened was that I put a video up about Cannon Hinnant, and all the video was, he's the 5-year-old that was shot and executed by his neighbor. And I put a video, he happened to be white. I put a video up, and it was just Oprah Winfrey lecturing everyone on, no matter how bad things could happen to you if you're white, but you always have your privilege. And then I just juxtaposed it without saying a word to the local story of Cannon Hinnant being murdered. And the question that I asked in the title of my video was, did Cannon Hinton have white privilege? Now, a criticism of this could be, oh, okay, well, perhaps this wasn't a story about white privilege, blah, blah, blah. There's criticisms that you could have of me, though I think my point still stands. However, one of these leaders of the debate community, a head coach in it, decided that instead what he would do would say that he was ashamed that I was in the debate community with him. And then he went on to say he was glad that my videos don't get many views. And he proceeded to later, in correspondence with me there, discuss how I just want to be the next Alex Jones because I think sitting in front of an American flag and yelling is somehow good. It's funny because the very people he gives the highest praise to in debate are people that yell and scream and talk about racism and fighting the evils of whiteness. He doesn't mock them for their passion, but he'll mock me. I don't know what sitting in front of an American flag has to do. He seemed to have some sort of contempt for that. I wonder why. Who would have thought a bunch of cultural Marxists have a problem with the American flag? And since then, other people in the debate community, some of which were polite, have reached out to me. And so I decided to do a video commenting on the debate community. It's like Hollywood, just in a nutshell. We don't have time to go through the whole video. It's an hour and a half, but in a nutshell, it's this. They claim to be the most morally superior, intelligent people. They think that anyone who disagrees with them is inferior. They're either too dumb or they're immoral or something. Yet, meanwhile, it is some of the most disgusting, intolerant, immoral people that you could find. And just one quick example of the immorality of the debate community. I was in a room with them. These are people that hashtag Me Too, believe it all, Kavanaugh shouldn't be in hearing. And it's almost a total orthodoxy. This entire community, it's verboten almost to be right-wing. You could count the number of people in your hand out of thousands that would have voted for Donald Trump in this community. It's not accepted. They decry your white privilege. You walk into a room and they say, denounce your white privilege. They talk about the evils of whiteness, the need to reject all whiteness. This is commonplace at debate tournaments. You'll never once hear someone talk about rejecting another skin color. Would never happen. But then they assure you when they're talking to the general public, oh, no. When we say white privilege, we're not anti-white people. But they're lying to you because they wouldn't say, if we just are against white privilege, that we demand you denounce your whiteness. Right. Anyways, here's a quick question, the story of their morality. As they claim to be a champion for sexual violence victims, I personally witnessed high-level people in the debate community tell me that they were aware of another high-level person that physically, sexually assaulted or raped at least 2 of his students. When I said, oh, come on, you heard rumors, you don't know. They assured me that they absolutely knew and had proof that it was true. When I asked them why they didn't call the authorities, they said, you don't understand, it would be dangerous to our careers. There's your moral superiors. I've never made more than $15 an hour my whole life. I live paycheck to paycheck. I would give up every amount of wealth I've ever received to help bring justice to a rape victim that I personally knew and had evidence were raped, and no one would speak up for them. Yet these people that live in fancy houses and have careers better than I'll ever have in my entire life, they couldn't worry about a hit on their pocketbook to the extent that they would help a rape victim. But they'll criticize you. If you're a construction worker, you've probably catcalled a woman. If you vote for Donald Trump, then clearly you're a fan of sexual assaulters. Right. But when it comes to their personal actions in life, they're worried about their career before they'll speak out against a rapist. That's the morality of these people in the debate community that seek to attack me and say that they're ashamed of me. So in closing on this issue, I'm more than happy that a community that will cover up for known rapists in their personal lives, that will advance the narrative of white people being evil, that seek to divide us on race and to kick out anyone that isn't ideologically totally aligned with them, I'm more than happy that they're ashamed of me.
Carlos, has he been talking to people in Williamsport again?
Well, here's the thing. How that dovetails into how Biden basically Sotomayored Harris pick into our lives. If you will allow me that metaphor, is that if you don't believe Harris with respect to what she did to Kavanaugh and accepting the nomination from Biden, then do you believe that Harris will support women and people who are victims of sexual assault? Is that a fair question, Todd?
If they tell her to, she will.
Great answer.
No, seriously.
And that dovetails. Good.
She absolutely makes it up out of whole cloth.
No
she
question.
uttered a statement earlier this week that the 8 years of Obama and Biden created more jobs than the Trump administration. Or, I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. It was so patently false.
Right.
And then the person she's going to have a debate with came back with the biggest clapback you could ever have and go, excuse me, nominee Harris, this particular administration created more jobs in the last 3 months than the 8 years of the Obama-Biden administration combined. And we're in the middle of a pandemic.
And that's why it's so important to keep everything closed and locked down. From the point of view of Democratic governors, this is all about the election.
Let me just say this about Kamala Harris that people are listening. And I'm sure Todd and Carlos chime in if you disagree with this, but I'm sure you agree. We think a lot of the politics positions that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris have are toxic. We think they're bad. But they're political positions, right? And at the end of the day, we could disagree with people politically. That's one thing. And it's often difficult, especially with Kamala Harris, to determine what her politics are because she'll change at the flip of a coin. Whatever they tell her to do is what she'll do. Let's just put it in this context. I don't care what you know about politics or what your beliefs are ideologically. Kamala Harris is a woman who came out in February when she was running against Joe Biden and said, when there were at least allegations of 4 women claiming that they were sexually touched inappropriately by Joe Biden, she claimed that she believed the women. Now, I understand if you're on the left, right now you're gnashing your teeth saying, Trump said grab them by the P word. He said that. I'm not saying whether or not I believe Joe Biden's guilty. I have been consistent that I believe Joe Biden is innocent until proven guilty, as was Kavanaugh, as was Keith Ellison, as was Menendez, as was Frank, what was his name? The guy from SNL.
Al Franken.
Al Franken. I didn't want to see any of them. They should have had their day in court. Republican or Democrat, I've been consistent. The issue isn't whether or not Joe Biden is guilty. The issue is Kamala Harris said he was. She said she believed these women. And as soon as it benefited her politically, she was willing to throw those women under the bus. If you're a boss, if you truly believed at your line of work, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, if you truly believe that the owner of your company or your boss was a serial sexual assaulter, would you take a promotion to work for them and talk about how great of a person they were? Every moral person in America would say no. Kamala Harris says yes. And now the media will cover for her. They won't ask her. And when she is forced to answer this question, she will say that there's now no evidence that these claims were true. That's what she'll say. That didn't stop her from attacking Kavanaugh. That didn't stop her from saying she believed these women when they first accused Joe Biden. So that's all you need to know about the character of Kamala Harris. And make no mistake about it, it matters. Because if the Democratic ticket wins the presidential nomination, she will be the de facto president. Someone who is willing to throw women she truly believes were sexual assault victims under the bus if it means getting more political power for herself.
So do you think she's vetting VP picks already or no?
No.
It's a fair question, right?
Honest answer, no.
Well, before we go to the representative, I just want to make sure that I tell you that I'm sticking with my prediction that Biden's not going to be the nominee. And
Agreed.
I've said this for 5 months. I don't know how that's going to manifest itself, but he's not going to be the nominee. I know 40 years in politics. Don't believe Carlos, but God, I hate being wrong. I mean, I hate being right all the time. It's like, the Nostradamus of Lycoming County, except he's never wrong.
Real quick, though, Kamala's not vetting VP picks because she knows she's just a stooge for the people that really run the party.
Who will really pick her picks, right?
They'll pick it. They're ready for it, yeah.
Todd.
Gentlemen, we are going to welcome in a return guest to the program here on Pennsylvania Patriots Radio. It's none other than State Representative Russ Diamond, who is sporting for the radio audience, not the video audience. You can see the shirt. He hails from the 2020 COVID State Champion County of Lebanon County. Representative Diamond, again, welcome on a Saturday morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. This shirt was actually given to me by a colleague, and I'm going out to something called Freedom Fest today to speak, so I figured I'd wear it out there to identify myself as a dangerous Lebanon County person.
Are you going to wear a mask to this particular situation, or are you not going to wear a mask so that people can see the unmasking of your positions and your feelings about that particular topic?
Well, I only wear a mask when I also wear a cape. So today is not a superhero moment, so I won't be wearing a mask.
Representative Diamond, this week, unbelievable news came out. If you recall, a question was asked in a press conference by a certain media member weeks and weeks and weeks and maybe even months back about withholding COVID funding. And the governor said, yes, I'll be withholding discretionary COVID funding. True to his word. He's held Lebanon County hostage for the better part of several months. And now what I would equate it to a consent decree, if you will, my word, not yours. The elected officials in Lebanon County have now agreed, if you will, to the governor's demand of releasing not 13 million, 12.8 million with a huge carve out. Would you like to fill in our audience on what just happened?
Sure. So the county actually filed a lawsuit, and I believe the governor figured out he would not win that lawsuit. That lawsuit was a slam dunk, but two of our county commissioners, the Democrat and one of the Republicans, signed an agreement that we would get the $12.8 million in Lebanon County. However, $2.8 million of it must be spent on a universal mask awareness campaign. Now, you have to understand Lebanon County. We have 140,000 people here. We have one teeny tiny little radio station. We've got one digital news service, and we've got the remnants of a newspaper. And I think you could buy all of them for $800,000 and still have $2 million left over to do so. I have no idea how you're going to spend $2.8 million on a pro-masking campaign in Lebanon County. And quite frankly, it's not going to change anybody's mind. Everybody's got their minds made up about masks. Pro or con, you're either for it, you're against it, and no amount of advertising is going to do it. But to me, this is on the level of extortion. And quite frankly, I think it's kind of like a personal jab at me personally, because I'm from Lebanon County and I'm kind of Tyrant Tom's worst nightmare. And I've been on the no mask campaign for a very, very long time. He's given a couple of indications that this is mostly about me. And it's crying shame that he's petty and personal like that and just doesn't follow the law. As we in the General Assembly, by the way, we have a General Assembly in Pennsylvania. We write the laws. The governor actually signs them into law, but he ignored that and withheld this money. But now he's releasing it with this condition that you spend almost 20% of it on a pro-masking campaign that will change not one mind.
Representative Diamond, thank you so much. I think that you're probably my favorite person in politics in PA here for standing up the way you do against the tyranny that we see from Governor Wolf. One word I would not use to describe you would be the word cowardly, which Governor Wolf sought to describe you and everyone else who, wanted to feed their families and make sure the economy was running. Let me ask you just a question. There is a debate going on over masks. So let's play to the least common denominator as far as getting out of that argument as much as we can. Do you believe, from what you've heard from the people advocating masks, that still, even under their explanation, masks are secondary? All of the experts that advocate masks talk about the need to social distance first, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely right. And that's always been my strategy. Look, that's been my strategy since I was born. My personal space is 5 feet. So adding another foot to it is no big deal. I mean, I don't like close talkers, anything like that. So for me, it's always been like, hey, I'm just going to stay away from that person. Well, hey, unless they approach me, I don't mind. I'm not afraid. But if somebody approaches me, I don't mind, shaking their hand or even giving them a hug or what have you. But I'm not going to go force myself into someone else's space. And yeah, you're right. Masks are a secondary or even tertiary a response here. And quite frankly, there's been enough research out there that says that there are very big problems with masks, false sense of security. People weren't washing them right. People weren't wearing them right, what have you. And it's become this politicized thing now, which is just so bizarre.
And this is why I bring that up. Given the fact that then we could all agree with that, I think even Governor Wolf and Health Secretary Levine would agree with that. Given that, how furious does it make you that because of a personal vindictive cause against you and your stance on masks, Governor Wolf has decided to punish the hardworking people of Lebanon County? In the meantime, he broke that first most important rule of social distancing when he decided to go out and march about how racist Pennsylvania was and how there's two Pennsylvanias, one for black people and one for white people. How much does that infuriate you?
Oh, it's completely infuriating. I mean, he said when he did that, he was asked in a press conference, well, didn't you violate your own, orders, guidelines, whatever? And he said, yeah, but it was important to me. Well, guess what? Making a living and living life and being able to feed your family is important to a lot of other people. Here's the really infuriating part about this $2.8 million. In the agreement, it also allocated some money for mental health services and addiction services, which are skyrocketing, by the way. I mean, we have a 600% increase in calls to suicide prevention headlines. I saw an article just this morning that said 1 out of 4 young adults has considered taking their own life. So in that agreement, yes, $2.8 million for mass, but for mental health services, $250,000. I've talked to therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists in Lebanon County, and they are swamped. I mean, they are swamped. People are just out of their minds with anxiety and depression, and this is the kind of response we get where it's like, no, Tyrant Tom says you got to wear a mask. That's what we're going to spend the bulk of this money on. Are you freaking kidding me?
And Representative Todd, just real quick, do you know what the current number of the cases are in Lebanon County?
We here in Lebanon County, we are on a downward slope. In fact, since we quote unquote went to yellow with our commissioners, the thing that Tyrant Tom is so upset about, we have been doing far better than our neighboring counties. They're all kind of seeing this little uphill tick, and we haven't seen that here in Lebanon County. In fact, we went a very, very long time. We had one death, I think, yesterday or the day before in a long-term care center, but we didn't have a death in a long-term care facility for a very, very long time. And our numbers per 100,000 people are lower than every surrounding county. So I'm not so sure why he thinks we need to be punished. We should be rewarded.
So just real quick, and then Todd will go to you. So what we've learned here is $2.8 million for what we know that even the advocates of masks say, well, it's just tertiary. It really isn't the biggest effect to combat a disease in Lebanon County that is on the significant decline that we're talking about. Numbers of people in single digits that have passed away recently from COVID versus 250,000 with a 600% increase in the amount of mental health and suicide case, people worried about suicide that's occurring. That, I think, is shocking and sums this up better than anything I could say.
Absolutely. I mean, you got it right on the money.
I think Carlos is anxious to reclaim his time.
Good morning, and thank you very much again, Representative. I don't know if you remember the last time you were on, and the question that I asked you, the one that was most important for me was, what can we do to help you? That was the question that I asked you. And that question came from my side gig from being a filmmaker by trade is that I do political media, photography, video, writing, social media. So being on the battlefield and the battlefield awareness that I have from the voters, your customers, is that we feel helpless.
Okay.
We feel that we don't know what to do. It's bad enough that no one's saying anything and pushing back. What can we do to help you? But before you answer that question, I wanted to put some perspective on something that you said regarding the $2.8 million. That is, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be generous. I don't like to attack people without facts, but it's coercion. If you could take one word to describe what the governor has done to the people of Pennsylvania, is that he's coerced them, as he is coercing Lebanon County now to making you spend $2.8 million on an ad campaign. For clarity's sake, $2.8 million is $0.8 million higher than the average statewide judicial campaign for a Supreme Court justice. The average Supreme Court justice, the person that's running for Supreme Court justice or any other statewide campaign, spends $2 million. Can you believe that? So in a small county like Lebanon County, I can't even imagine, beyond the examples that you set with respect to what's there media-wise, that they are going to coerce you into creating an ad campaign for the entire state. And he's winking to his people and to the Democrats. See, I showed Russ Diamond who's boss. I need you to, as clearly as possible, and if you don't have it right now, please in the future do so on your social media, articulate specifically what it is that we need to do as a people to help you push back on this. This is not the America that raised me.
Well, here's what people can do. I know a lot of people, well, what petition can I sign? There's no petition you can sign in Pennsylvania to help us. But what you can do is you can call your state representative, you can call your state senator and encourage them to support the articles of impeachment against Tom Wolf. That's House Bill 915, I believe. You can encourage them to support House Resolution 879, which is my resolution to urge the removal or resignation of Dr. Levine. The other thing that's important, and look, I hate talking about this stuff because it's my least favorite part of this job, is that there's an election coming up. So, and I know that the governor and outside influences are helping to fund my Democrat opponent, somebody who's going to walk in lockstep with this guy. So I need help too. So I would just ask everybody, if you want to help me personally, go to russdiamond.vote. You can help me out with, a little contribution to my campaign, because that's the real fight that's ahead of us is, now they're trying to, win a Democrat majority in the House. And I'm part of that mix, and it's going to be a tough race. And, we need as much help as we can get. And I know everybody's strapped for cash now. This is to begin with, this is the biggest thing I hate about politics, is that you have to spend money to campaign, to keep the job, to keep fighting. But it's even more insulting now when I know that 30,000 Pennsylvanians who applied for unemployment in March still haven't received the dime. So it's real hard for me to go out and say, hey, cough up $10 or, $25 or $50. But unless you want a General Assembly that's just going to go along with this governor, we need your help. And it's not just me. I mean, there are Republicans all across the state who need help. So I would advocate for you to go out and, offer them a little financial assistance too, because these campaigns cost money. I mean, just one mailer in my district with postage and printing costs about $5,000. So, that's a lot of money. So, and it's unfortunate that we have to spend that money to keep our jobs, but that's the price of, being in politics in Pennsylvania. So russdiamond.vote. If somebody, if folks could go there and help me out, or go to your own Republican legislators' website and help them out as well. I mean, it's going to be a tough go this year. The Democrats are coming in, not just to overturn the Pennsylvania General Assembly, but of course, the president's ticket. There's probably going to be $1 billion spent in Pennsylvania on politics this year.
Yeah.
And it's going to turn us all over. And we just need good patriots to chip in and help us out too, so that we can put up a fair fight.
Well, that's why I'm asking you. That's why I phrased the question is in the way that I did, because I don't believe that people will be resistant to donating money to campaigns if they understand exactly what these moves that you're making downfield mean. So can you articulate what your bill and what the other bill actually do?
Well, the bill for the urging the resignation or removal of Dr. Levine, I am hoping that generates hearings. And what I would like is for a hearing where Dr. Levine is drug in under subpoena and asked, okay, tell us how you made this decision to shove these people back into nursing homes with COVID. And tell us the exact date of when you moved your mother out. We understand it was her decision. And as a child of someone who's elderly, I would have done the same thing. But we want to know what date that happened so that we can compare it to the date that you filed the order to put people with COVID back in. We need to know those details. What was that decision-making process?
I think that the investigation component is a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah,
I think you should do a video about that and tell the people specifically.
Without a legislative instrument such as a resolution, you can't conduct any kind of hearings like that. So the impeachment thing works the same way. There's 5 articles of impeachment now. There may be 1 or 2 more amended into it, but you need to actually have those hearings so that you can get some answers and maybe do some follow-up investigations. All this stuff takes time, unfortunately. I mean, there's not.
How many people do you have on your side, and how many people do you still need in the legislature to make these things happen?
Well, I don't know that it's a matter of having X amount of people on our side. The challenge.
How many votes do you have?
The challenge now is convincing those committees. Like my resolution against Dr. Levine is in the Health Committee, so we need Representative Kathy Rapp we need people to urge her to hold a hearing on that. And the loudest people she hears from is the people who are on that committee. So representatives like Stephanie Borowicz, I know she's pushing for it. I'm not sure exactly who else. I'm not on that committee. I'm also not on the Judiciary Committee where the impeachment hearings are. So we need members of the Judiciary Committee to start pushing for that as well. And, of course, they know I'm on, but we need them to push their chairman to start calling hearings. And we are, as members of the General Assembly, we're pushing our leadership to go, hey, look, we need to do this. We need to do this because we need this information. So it's kind of like we just need everybody to encourage all those people to start acting.
So seditious talk is our specialty. I don't know if you knew that, but
okay.
What happens if you don't pay what happens if you don't do the mass campaign? You just decide not to do it. What happens then?
Actually, part of the agreement is that all the payments have to be verified to the governor, and there's the threat of if it's not carried out the way the governor says, they could lose all the money. So it wasn't just coercion. It was coercion with the threat of you lose everything if you don't do what I say.
Right.
So,
which dovetails perfectly into having a hearing as to why he did this.
Absolutely. I mean, you just got to have hearings. You got to have people on the record swearing to tell the truth, giving real answers. Because a lot of times when we do hearings in Harrisburg, what happens is the administration will send people in and we'll ask them questions and they'll go, well, I don't have that information in front of me, so we'll get back to you later. Well, they never get back to us. So you need subpoena power. And that's one of the reasons we have to get back to Harrisburg sooner rather than later, so that we can, only 2 of our committees right now have subpoena power, and that is the Appropriations Committee and the Government Oversight Committee, which is more of an ad hoc kind of committee. But we need every committee to have subpoena power so we can drag these people in front and put them under oath and get real straight answers from them on the spot. Give them advance notice. Here's what we're going to ask you. Bring the information because we want to see the evidence.
What do you do about my last question here? And this one is probably the most important one, Representative, because this is what I'm seeing on the battlefield. The politicians that I'm talking to in Lycoming County are now starting to see a very real pushback with respect to them wanting to open up the county and to open up business completely and totally. But the thing that's getting in their way is that people are authentically and legitimately scared.
Yeah.
So what the governor did worked. He's frightened these people into inaction. What's your best ideas on how to fight back, and what can we do to help you do that?
Well, I think, again, I mean, if you guys can tell the tale of Lebanon County up there, I mean, we fought back and our numbers went down. You can see other countries in the world where they didn't do what we did, and their numbers are getting a little bit better. I mean, it's just those but FDR said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I mean, fear is a monstrous tool. And you're right. The governor has used it successfully here, and he's scared the bejesus out of people. I think there's going to be a seminal moment coming up, and I don't like to put it in Las Vegas terms, but I'm doing an over/under of 2 weeks into the school year, because I think when schools open, there is going to be a pending disaster. Not a disaster in reality, but a disaster of overreaction. When the first kid tests positive, you're going to have, parents clamoring to shut the entire school down. For me, I think that's going to be a seminal moment in Pennsylvania. And I think this is why the governor has backed off of actually doing any broad mandates on schools opening or broad mandates on the sports, because he's afraid of parents. He's afraid of the backlash he's going to get from parents. And he knows, I think there's a disaster coming our way too when these schools open. And hopefully that'll be the thing that either shakes us out of our fear. I'm not going to give the alternative. I want that to shake people out of their fear. It's like, well, my kid's going to school. Yeah, okay, a kid got sick, but he's not in school anymore. Let's just keep going to school. I don't know what's going to happen. I just think it's going to be a nightmare once schools open. And I think I'm hoping that it's a watershed moment for freedom in Pennsylvania. That people just start going, yeah, we were scared for nothing. I mean,
Rob,
we'll have to see.
Rob, if you can take the next one, and if you could remind Todd, the representative, about the rally at the Rock tomorrow.
What county? I forget the county of it. I just know I show up at your place and you get me there.
Bradford County.
Bradford, yeah. So Carlos and I will be at the rally at the Rock, which is a conservative gathering where we'll be, talking about the importance of our freedom and things like that. I believe we have several federal representatives that are going to be there. Correct?
Yeah, General Spalding's going to be there. Steve Bannon, all the state row office people are going to be there. Numerous U.S. representatives. It's hosted by Doug McClinka, who's a commissioner in Bradford County. He has a large property, and so he's expecting a vociferous Republican crowd. And you would be welcome there as our guest, being that you are going hand to hand with the governor. And you're one of the few people, and I'm embarrassed to say this to you, Representative, it's you and Mastriano. And you and Mastriano against the world. And this is why I ask the questions that I ask you is how can we help you? Because we're not going to tolerate that happening and you doing this fight alone. We're just not going to do that.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I really do. And look, I know that there are numerous of our colleagues who are in this fight with us. They don't have my background. My background is as an activist. Okay. So they've never come from that. So I don't know that they're equipped to do the things that I do. It doesn't mean that they feel any less about it.
Right.
But some of this takes practice and time to be able to turn things around and be able to just stand up right to the guy without having that 48-hour lag where you go, you know how that is. It's like 2 days later, like, oh, I was in that conversation. I should have said this. Right. So I've been practiced at doing that because I've been an activist for so long. So don't write off our colleagues simply because they're not as vocal as me or Doug Mastriano. There are a lot of them with us, and we're all great teammates in Harrisburg. And but I appreciate you noting that we've been out there. But it's because I've had practice. That's why I'm out there.
But from a media point of view, the perspective that I'm looking at from talking to people is that what is unseen counts for nothing, and I hate those rules, but those are the rules. What's unseen counts for nothing. If we don't see it and we don't know it, then it doesn't exist, no matter how much your feelings, you're feeling inside and how you think it. Right now we need pushback, and we need more than pushback, Representative. We need execution. Yes. And that's why I'm asking, what can we do to execute for you and do things? And in what you've said, you've already given me ideas, to isolate the representatives that are in these committees, to be able to force these people to do that. That's isolation. That's targeting. That's something that people can gather their ideas around. And you should do a video about this with respect to your idea of having hearings for these two people, because that is really effective. It focuses people to say, This is how I can help them. Here's how I can participate and be counted myself.
Yeah.
Rob.
Go ahead, Todd, please.
Thank you. I'm reclaiming my time, gentlemen. I'm reclaiming my time.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Diamond, you mentioned a moment ago that the perception is the governor has great fear of parents. Was that not indicative of the move over the last 10 days, 2 weeks of I'm going to make a recommendation that high school and youth sports, don't get played until January of 2021. And then the PIAA saying, well, it's just a recommendation. It's not, it's not mandated. We'd like to have this conversation with you, postponing the start for 2 weeks. And then this conversation yesterday that Chris Harlan of the Trib came out and said was, quote, uneventful. I mean, your thoughts on the whole PIAA and punting on sports?
Well, punting is a good term. It's an apropos term, and I wish they would stop punting. I wish they would just take the ball and run it past the goal line and tell parents, hey, we're going to do sports. We're going to be careful. We're going to oversee it because, look, they already know. And this was asked, too, that there's a lot of sports that go on outside of the PIAA and without that kind of oversight. So, I mean, that's really the choice. Kids, I mean, I can't imagine if you're a disadvantaged kid in the city of Harrisburg and your one hope, literally, of getting out of Allison Hill in Harrisburg was to play football and potentially get a scholarship. I can't imagine what you're going through right now. So I mean, I think the PIAA just needs to suck it up and say, we're going for it. I hope they do. I think they've put off their decision until August 31st.
24th.
Yeah, the 24th now?
Yeah, they're meeting on the 21st, and then they would like to restart it on the 24th.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope they do. I mean, because they're not going to get a commitment out of this governor. They're not going to get a commitment out of this governor because he has shown that, for lack of a better term, he's chicken. He doesn't want to make half the parents mad because whatever he says, he's going to make half the parents mad. He doesn't want the wrath of parents. And believe me, the last thing anybody wants is the wrath of parents, and especially sports parents. So, I think the PIAA needs to just man up, go for it, be careful, and do it.
But this is the overarching question. All the press conferences that I've been in, whether it's virtually or they're in person, all we ever get is data, science. And then when you ask about the data, well, we don't have the granular data, right? Well, how are you telling these kids? And I have a soon-to-be sophomore athlete who's trying to get a fall season going in a sport with her teammates, right? I just had a senior graduate in the band. The underclassmen and now the seniors to be all just had band camp, socially distanced, masks, everything else. They're doing what they're supposed to do. And then there's not supposed to be any fans in the stands. Right. How do you not have a fan in the stands with seats that are, I'll just use an example, bleachers that accommodate 2,500 people, and you can't have a concession stand? We can go to big box stores. We can go to the grocery store. So if you want to go to the concession stand, wear a mask, stand 6 feet apart from the next customer, and make it happen. As you know, Representative, these concession stands are the lifeblood for not just the sports teams, the bands, the extracurriculars, everything else. There is such a huge effect on school communities, and I think you've got it spot on. The over-under is 2 weeks to a complete school shutdown and go to cyber school. All of that, I know there was a lot to unpack there. I know it's noon. If you could give us another 2 minutes just in reaction to that, that'd be great.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is ludicrous to say, well, first of all, if I'm a parent and you tell me I can't go to my kid's game, I'm going to be pretty mad because you know what? I know that they have an ambulance standing by at the football games and that sort of thing. So, but if my kid gets hurt and I'm not there, I'm going to be pretty upset. As far as the band stuff goes, I just saw yesterday the Pennsylvania Music Educators Association canceled for the entire school year, all in-person kind of gatherings, such as district band or state band, and I played the trumpet in high school, and that was like one of our big things. It's like, yeah, well, I want to go to districts, I want to go to states, and I want to sit on that stage and play a concert with all the other best musicians in the state. Well, when that's gone, I mean, now kids are going to just start losing interest. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And again, this is all driven by fear, Todd. It's all fear. And I watched that press conference. I think they were at the York YMCA. I watched that press conference when they talked about, well, we don't have any granular. Are you kidding me? You have no data. So you're just going on a hunch here. What other decisions have you made just going on a hunch? Because let me tell you what the real impacts of those are. We've got still 30,000 people without anything from unemployment. We've got 5,000 people dead in nursing homes. We have people who can't figure out whether they're going up or down or left or right because you have instilled fear with them. We've got people overdosing. We've got people calling suicide hotlines. We've got a 600% increase in that. We have therapists and psychologists who can't make time for enough patients because their demand is so high. And you're working on something where you have no granular data. All you have is an article about some summer camp in Georgia. Really? Really? You're going to impact 12.8 million people on that kind of thin evidence? I'm sorry. It's just time to end this all, Todd. It's just time to end it all. Let's get back to life as normal. Everybody's aware that there's a virus amongst us. So if somebody gets sick, we know what to do. Squirrel away for 2 weeks, you know. And here's the thing. The people who are getting sick now, or not, the people who are testing positive now. Testing positive. That's the big pornographic number we see every day. 800 people tested positive. Well, how many of them were sick? How many of them went to the hospital? We are at the bottom of the curve. We talked about flattening the curve. We're at the bottom of the curve of hospitalizations. I mean, I think we're down around 500 out of 11,000 available beds in Pennsylvania. And that's from a high point of 3,000. I think it was back in April or maybe early May. So we have done what we were supposed to do. We flattened the curve. And this virus is less lethal than everybody thought it was. It's time to end the fear. It's time to get back to business. It's time to get back to school. It's time to play football. It's time to, play your instruments. Let's see a halftime show. Let's just get back to regular life.
And on that point, I find it ironic that so many people that their first inclinations to take people's rights away, to take away your freedoms, to collapse the economy. Never mind that they don't look at the implications of what will happen once we have that collapsed economy. And we're already starting to see it, like the suicides that are increasing. But they say we have to trust the experts. 2 points real quick on that. Isn't the CDC a group they say to trust? Hasn't the director of the CDC specifically came out and said it's time to open schools? In fact, Here's a direct quote from the director of the CDC. He candidly discusses how school closures have affected children and teenagers across the country and how previously existing issues are becoming bigger. Quote, we're seeing sadly far greater suicides than results now than we are deaths from COVID. We're seeing far greater deaths from drug overdose that are above excess that we had as a background than we're seeing from the deaths of COVID. That's the director of the CDC who went on to say he's imploring people to open up schools, and because the science shows that getting kids' life back to normal is best for their physical and mental health. So how is it that we are the people that all of a sudden are deemed immoral and we're anti-science when we're the ones actually listening to medical professionals in the CDC and around the world, which every single study has showed it is healthier to get these kids back into these events like sporting events and back into school?
Well, that doesn't really fit in with Tyrant Tom's little petty narrative here of wanting to pay back, people with political retribution. It doesn't fit into his narrow view of, hey, listen to me, I'm the governor, I'm large and in charge. And you forgot one important thing about reopening schools, which is that when schools closed in the spring, we had a 50% reduction of child abuse reporting, because most of our child abuse reports, and they're not all well-founded, but most of the initial reports come from our school settings. And so how many kids are suffering at home under child abuse that's not being reported, and how many kids will continue to suffer under that abuse if we don't reopen the schools as normal, or if we close them again? It's absolutely horrendous. You usually think that Democrats are all about the social aspects of public policy. But here's one, they completely forgot about the social aspects of the public policies that they're either recommending, or I don't know, what is it, a recommendation? Is it a mandate? I don't know what it is. But they've totally forgotten about those social implications with depression, the anxiety, the suicides, the reports of abuse, domestic abuse is increased. I mean, it's just absolutely horrendous, and we just cannot go on down this road.
It's even worse than what you're saying. I'll go a step further. It's what makes this particularly galling to me is they'll later, mark my words, put it down on your calendar that I said this day. The same Democrats in Wolf's administration and elsewhere around the country will point to the horrendous things that's happening to children as a result of the lockdowns as proof that COVID was so bad and we needed the lockdowns. That's exactly what they're going to do. And on that note, what they did, I've asked people, understand, most of the people that I know in my life, they're not heavily involved in politics. Representative Diamond, you're not a virologist, are you? I know Todd and Carlos and I aren't. But I guarantee if you asked any one of us who know very limited about viruses at the beginning of this, hey, who do you think the virus will affect most? We would have said probably the elderly. How is it that the expert that I'm supposed to listen to, Health Secretary Levine and her administration, while she was pulling her mother out of nursing homes, declared that we should force COVID patients in nursing homes, which led to tens of thousands of deaths. Now, anyone that has any second grade education knows, wow, that sounds like a really bad idea. But after they murdered those people, sent them to death camps, they then have the gall to point to those deaths and say, see, we were right. We need to take more of your rights away. They're the ones who set the situation up that led to these people dying. How does that prove that now they're the experts that we should listen to?
It doesn't. It actually disproves it. And, you're preaching to the choir here, brother. You really are. I mean, it's like you're spot on. It's like, I mean, the whole listen to the science thing, and they're not listening to the science, or there is no science. I mean, that's what we found out with this high school sports. There's no data. Right. There's nothing. I mean, it's just one anecdote or two anecdotes, and, we've seen what's happened in other states. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? These are the people who are in charge of 12.8 million people. So either the 12.8 million people are going to wise up, or they're going to clam up. I mean, the fear is going to make you clam up, but a little courage is going to make you wise up and go out and just live. Look, I've just been living my life. That's what I'm doing. I'm living my life. I'm ignoring the governor, well, as much as I can as a legislator. But as far as my personal life goes, I haven't let his mitigations impact my personal life. I'm just going out to eat whenever I want. I'm going to gather with people whenever I want. And I'm just not afraid. And we have to go forward without fear.
You've been posting any pictures of the facade that you were working on last time we talked to you?
Actually, now I'm working on the side of the house that goes all the way from the basement all the way up to the gable end. So this is like a month-long side of the house. So when that side of the house is done, I pull the scaffolding down, I will post a picture for you guys.
Fantastic. We're looking forward to it.
Representative Russ Diamond, appreciate your time as always. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And as Mike Gallagher, another radio host, says, keep fighting the good fight.
All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
God bless you.
There it is, State Representative Russ Diamond, and he is a return guest here to Pennsylvania Patriots Radio. Appreciate his time, as always. And he just mentioned, I think on a Saturday, he's got to get back on the scaffold.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to, coming off of Representative Diamond, I wanted to juxtapose what Major League Baseball is doing as an example for opening up schools. So before I went on the media blackout, the St. Louis Cardinals had an outbreak. Is that right?
And the Marlins.
Okay. So, right, in Pennsylvania, no less. How can Major League Baseball not have had a plan to address 5 people getting COVID on their team? To public relations wise addressed the fact that they were on top of it without having the public think that you weren't prepared for it. Now you don't know what to do, and now you're thinking about canceling the season because you had 5 people get COVID in one day. See, that's not preparation, and this is Major League Baseball.
Rob,
so when I tell you
news today, the Reds have a player that tested positive for COVID. So the Reds-Pirates game today has been postponed, and tomorrow. Carlos, back to you.
They don't have a plan. They don't have a plan. They don't have a. Here's the plan. Can I give you the translation? Here's the plan. We must indefinitely suspend any and all activities so that we can give more time for the virus to spread for political gain. That's the answer. That's what they're doing.
Well, of course that's what they're doing. But if we assume the best possible motivations for people, so certainly that's what the leadership's doing.
No, you lost me. Sorry. No.
I know what you're saying.
No,
but listen,
no.
Here's strategically why you're making a mistake not doing that, because we should seek all allies we can, and it's easiest to make the least common denominator case. So even if I assume the best possible motivation, that doesn't mean I believe it, but there are certainly some people that could believe that, and it's worth talking about it in that context. So if that's the case, and they believe not one death, we need to avoid even one death, it is easy to see why that is not a tenable position. If you're the type of person that says that we need to have a policy to make sure not one person gets COVID, then the solution is lock yourselves in your home the rest of your life and never leave. The solution would be never drive an automobile, and if you do, the speed limit should be 5 miles an hour, because if it's more than that, someone might be in a wreck. It's clearly impossible to live your life that way. Now, Carlos, what you're saying, when you factor on top, it's obvious when you look at in context of how they arbitrarily say you have to believe science here, but then they ignore science when it goes against their position. It is clear that they're doing this for political power only. They want to destroy the middle class in this country, as I talk about all the time. They want to punish us for not voting for their chosen candidate, Hillary Clinton, and so they will make our life hell until we learn to vote for them.
And guys, the larger question is this. I mean, in any season of baseball, how are the Pittsburgh Pirates 4.5 games behind the St. Louis Cardinals, who have played a grand total of 5 games?
Look, the fact that they're not playing today is the best Pirates news that's occurred all year. And I'm a fan. I stuck with the Pirates. I remember when the Pirates were 1 year away for their losing streak being able to buy a beer. 20 years of losing, I stuck with those bums, and then they finally start to get good and fall off the face of the earth. In some ways, I can tell you what Pirate fans are saying right now, and it's, in a little, a little humor of the situation, some gallows humor. Well, if you're going to pick a year to be probably historically one of the worst teams ever, might as well be this year, right? So, yeah, it's not looking good for them.
Well,
same thing with the Penguins getting knocked out of the tournament too. I mean, it's like nobody cares.
Easy. It was the Montreal Canadiens' superior play.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we showed Philadelphia last night what we could do, right?
Now, listen. This is the last press conference I was allowed to be in.
Habs in 2020. That's all I'm saying.
Think about this for a minute. The last press conference I was in with the governor and/or Secretary Levine was when I challenged Secretary Levine on the Penguins being allowed to play in Toronto and Toronto not being allowed to play in Pittsburgh and the Marlins playing in Philly. That's the last, and with real numbers, Carlos and Robert, it's the last time I was allowed to be in the room.
Well, that's unreal.
All I have to say is that the medicine that Rob is trying to give me regarding having the faith and keeping the faith is that Roberto Clemente, Pittsburgh Pirates are the team of Roberto Clemente, and so eat that, guys. Okay?
We had Bobby Bonilla before he got paid for the rest of his life by the Mets too. Don't forget that,
That's right.
Let me transition to something real quick here, and then I want to get to the Myrtle Beach story. But I just wanted to mention this because you mentioned the idea of having faith and having hope. it looks really depressing, and I know we're talking about a lot of terrible stories on here that are bad for the country week after week. Let me give some hope to conservatives and more than conservatives, people out there of all political persuasions that hate their country and don't want to see it destroyed by the radical extremist left, the globalist Marxists that are running the Democratic Party. The positions that they're taking, the hope that we have is all of the institutions that have led to this cultural Marxism, have led to the culture war being lost by the right, are going to start collapsing under the weight of their own ridiculous demands. For example, our education system that now seeks to indoctrinate our children in preschool about the evils of whiteness, about the evils of the United States. Guess what's going to happen? Their teachers' unions right now are saying, pay me, but I don't want to go to work. And Americans are going to start waking up and saying, you know what? You go ahead and stay off work. We're not going to pay you anymore.
Exactly.
We're going to take that money and we're going to provide education and put it in the hands of the parents that will be able to decide the best education opportunity for their children. We've seen in inner cities, for example, how in inner city black communities, that is probably one of the most important things other than a two-parent household. Oh, by the way, Black Lives Matters against the nuclear family as well. But other than that, charter schools in the inner cities, they are tremendous. Yet somehow the teachers' unions are against them. Somehow the Democrats are against them because they don't want black people actually getting an education. Because then, if black people get an education,
any people.
Well, that's right. But specifically black people, and the reason is because they want to treat them like children because they're the ones who think that they're better than the black community. They say, no, we can't trust black parents to choose the school that's the best for their children. That's what they believe. So we're starting to see that. All of these cities that have, I think that the cities in this country were a bright spot in the history of the world. I've never been to New York City. I'm someone who's a rural Pennsylvanian my whole life, but I can't help but get a sparkle in my eye when I listen to Sinatra sing New York, New York, But the smugness of so many people that have denigrated flyover country, that have denigrated parts like Williamsport, Pennsylvania, that thought that they were smugly better than us. Guess what's happening to those cities? People are fleeing in droves. They're starting to realize because of the ridiculous positions that have led to rampant homelessness and drug use, denigration of the police, which is leading to, in July alone, shootings were up over last July in New York City, 177%. They're starting to see how their lockdown policies over COVID, all of that. The irony of the lockdown is it didn't just crush New York financially. It also showed people that live in New York, I don't have to live here. I could do Zoom meetings. I could use technology. I'll move to the suburbs. All of these institutions, their hubris, their tyranny in pushing pain, thinking we'll punish Trump supporters, we'll punish flyover country. Every single decision they've made as authoritarian tyrants is starting to blow back on the very people that support them. And they will have to learn the hard way. Cancel culture is now starting to cancel the very people that led it. So if I could give you hope, it's this. It's sad that the pain that we'll go through, but the very prescriptions of authoritarianism that these radical extremists are offering is going to dismantle the very systems that allow them to operate.
Well, you want to know what pain is? Try having what someone just recently told me this week. Try having a kid that's going into kindergarten and having a Zoom kindergarten with 24 kids. You know what that looks like?
Oh, boy.
Pain. So yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. And that's really what the bottom line is, ideology for conservatism. Conservatism is about embracing the truth because we know that every single action that you take has consequences. So let's do the Zoom and let's have 24 kids on Zoom that are kindergartners. Let's go. Because that's the fastest way to dismantle the education system. The fastest way. You want to see an exodus of teachers that are going they're going to have a lot of pressure is the best way that I can describe it, put upon them to succeed and teach these kids through Zoom, 24 kindergartners. Go ahead, show me. Never going to happen.
I agree.
It's all a lie. All of it is a lie. All of it is a lie.
Well, look, you see, like, just real quick, we really have to get to the Myrtle Beach story because it's going to be at least a half hour thing. But just real quick, and Todd, see if you could comment on this. In addition to the teachers, did you see the story of University of Georgia, somewhere in Georgia, I believe? Their students had a die-in because they were protesting having to go back to class. These are the same.
Dying, so they make believe that they were dying on the ground?
Yeah, they laid and they held tombstones like they were dying. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd. Why shouldn't we give these students their wish and say, okay, no school? Wouldn't they be the first people to scream, that's not fair, I want my degree?
Well, it's the same thing from the folks that are trying to defund the police. Anytime something goes sideways, call the police. Yep. Call the police, especially on Carlos. Call the police.
That's right. Call the police on Carlos.
Hey, let's go Pens, by the way. Let's go Pens.
Yeah.
See the hat? Go Pens. I saw you change your hat from original to something else. Let's go Pens.
Well, that was in direct response to the fact that, you were talking out of school about how great the Penguins are and denying the fact that the Montreal Canadiens defeated them and moved on to the playoffs, and last night spanked the Flyers at Philadelphia. That's all I'm saying.
They didn't play in Philly.
Okay, then. Whatever.
They played in the bubble in Toronto.
Who is the home team?
No, but listen. I'm not arguing with
you. It's not home team. And Toronto is not a natural home base for Montreal. Come on.
No, but listen. This is the whole idea of the Toronto Blue Jays can't come to Pittsburgh because it might spread the virus.
I get it.
Really?
We still won. We'll take the victory over your overarching, COVID point. We don't care about COVID.
Oh, okay.
We care about the Stanley Cup.
So now sports trumps COVID?
We care about the Stanley Cup being in Montreal. That is all.
Well, here's my question. Whoever raises the Stanley Cup this year, okay, when they do the whole hand it off to your teammate thing, are the two guys that wear the white gloves that hand off the trophy to begin with, are they going to have to use the rubbing alcohol and the hand sanitizer to wash down the Stanley Cup? I mean, that presentation is going to take 6 hours before anybody else can touch it.
I don't know why. Here's the thing, like all this talk, doesn't it seem like having sports in general, if it's dangerous for children, isn't it dangerous for adults? Here's what someone who's out of shape like me would like to see. Cancel the NFL, the NHL, the MLB, give everyone PlayStation controllers and just let the teams play Madden virtually all in their own homes, and we'll decide the Super Bowl that way, right? Then maybe I'll have a chance.
Why do you keep hiding your video? Every time I hit you with something like that, your head goes down. I think you're laughing.
No, I'm just having my coffee.
Eating a sandwich.
I do know the bearer of the cup. His name is Phil Pritchard. Phil Pritchard has been bearing the cup since, I want to say, 1996. The same guy. He's in charge of the cup, and fantastic guy. He works at the Hockey Hall of Fame, where they keep the cup, and he's the white-haired guy, or the blonde-haired guy, now white, that travels all over the place and is the bearer of the cup. I'm sure they'll have a contingency. Likely, this is what I would say. If Carlos was the commissioner, or if I was the president of the Montreal Canadiens, we test our players every week. We're going to come out and say that right away. We're going to test our players every week. Okay? If the White House tests people that go and visit the president every day, and they have a 2-hour test, we can test our players every week, no matter what it costs. Okay? Because that is a signal that we're looking to do the right thing. And we're going to test them, and we're going to have them sequestered as much as we can, both teams, whoever ends up in the Stanley Cup Finals in the last game. And you can switch, and you can have the cup go from person to person, because we tested this morning and we tested everybody else in the other team this morning. Everyone was negative, so we're going to continue that, and that's it. End of story. But that's a plan. That's a plan. Speaking of no plan, speaking of winging it, speaking of doing things and making mistakes and hurting yourselves and hurting others, give us an update and let's dig deep into Myrtle Beach. So let's assume that the people that are listening right now have never heard of it, and tell us a story. And then we'll dovetail into what's happening today.
Williamsport Millionaire High School baseball team took a spring trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in 2018, end of March. They've done that for several years, going back years. Well, in 2018, one teammate committed what Lycoming County District Attorney, 10 days into taking his office and then subsequently put a press release out about, said it amounted to criminal sexual misconduct. That particular incident was recorded on a cell phone and then disseminated to any number of social media platforms while in Myrtle Beach and then upon the return from the trip. So that is the genesis of the story.
Was that the only sexual attack?
There is purported to be another indecent assault involving a television remote with the same alleged perpetrator, a second victim, and again, recorded on a cell phone and disseminated.
Are there any salient details that you could discuss about the second attack with respect to why it's not an issue as much as the first, even though it is more brutal than the first?
Yeah, there's evidence being developed over the past 2 years that particular victim may have had to sign a non-disclosure or confidentiality agreement, and that money may have changed hands to keep that person quiet.
But regardless of who has it, and I mean the people who shot it, the people who received it, or Verizon, someone has that second video, correct?
No question. Yeah, it's sitting on a server somewhere, and it's up to the Attorney General's office to use their resources to go find it, or if somebody has details on that, they can reach out to me confidentially at news@talkwilliamsport.com, and we'll see what happens after that.
Okay, so the original video of John Doe number 1 does exist and is in the hands of law enforcement, correct?
Here and in Myrtle Beach.
And what did the Attorney General...
And I believe in the hands of the Attorney General, because right. I believe it went with the referral from the Lycoming County District Attorney's Office.
So what did the District Attorney say when you saw the video?
The current District Attorney?
Yes.
Yeah, it was criminal sexual misconduct.
He said...
That's what his takeaway was. And when Myrtle Beach received it, 5 months after the fact, when they called the school district, they immediately initiated a criminal investigation into it, having seen the video.
Right. So for some context, for context reasons, okay, there was a child line call. Tell us what child line is.
So child line, and Representative Diamond hit the nail on the head about child abuse cases and mental health cases. The child abuse hotline is the child line. And it's a number set up here in Pennsylvania that anybody can call it anonymously and report child abuse. And that's how this case on May 18th came to the forefront, that a mandated reporter made a phone call, and that phone call was then referred to the Lycoming County District Attorney's Office at the time. Ken Ossico was the district attorney. And then Chief Detective at the time, Willie Weber, ended up with the case.
So for clarity's sake, what people have to understand that in this case, after that child line call, which was on May 18th, 2018, nobody, absolutely nobody from the Williamsport Area School District in positions of power, and certainly as mandated reporters, and no one from law enforcement in Lycoming County ever called Myrtle Beach. Is that correct?
That is correct. Nobody from this end initiated contact with Myrtle Beach. The contact with the Myrtle Beach came from my phone call, and then Myrtle Beach Police Department and their detective bureau, their reaction to the case and reading the stories at the time.
So the lead investigator for the Lycoming County Prosecutor's Office and the principal and the school superintendent in the Williamsport Area School District never called Myrtle Beach, ever, to this day.
Correct. To this day.
This is more than 2 years
about
later.
The case. And in fact, when the principal in part 13 of the series, when the principal was confronted by the detective from Myrtle Beach, he never even clarified the fact that he was on the trip and or ran an investigation.
Now, tell us what you mean by part 13 of the investigation.
So the stories that I've been doing, there are more than 18 parts so far that are delineated as 18 parts. There are a couple of other stories that have gone into it as well. And I'm actually updating the numbers right now for Lycoming County, gentlemen, as we speak. 10 new cases have been added, and about 100 more negative results have come back.
Okay.
So Lycoming County now stands at 440 cases as of Saturday.
Let me ask you real quick on that, Todd. Do you mind if I ask you this? Because I'm interested, and I'm sure our audience will be. Where do you get those numbers?
It's on the Department of Health website, on the dashboard.
Okay, so yeah, I just wanted people to know so you could go check your own county. We obviously aren't going to go through every county, but you should be informed. Go to the Department of Health website and please get informed of what's going on in your county.
Yeah, because the governor and the secretary are certainly not going to let you know where to go get that stuff. You know, you're on your own. Proceed.
Well, and here's the thing, too. The dashboard, I was sent 2 press releases yesterday. One that was, here's the updated dashboard, and then they highlighted a part of it in regard to the restaurants and the case positivity rate and all that kind of deal, too. So it's the numbers can do what the numbers can do, right? So those 10 cases, is that 10 random people, or is it more in the nursing homes, right? Because of the mass testing that's going on every week in the nursing homes.
Well, that's why every county is different, and the permutations of how the disease and the virus has hit counties is very important. You know, those hot spots. But let's get back to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
So right off the top, Robert, is that enough information to get you upset when you hear about these things, that mandated reporters, people who are in charge of being in charge of your kids, never called the jurisdiction where these attacks happened? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to ask. Great insight there, Carlos. What I was thinking. I'm going to have my first child here in January. That's what I'm thinking of. Okay, I'm a parent. I'm going to be a parent. I'm sending my kids to a school district. What would I do if I found out? Listen, I understand that you might be saying, well, leave the legal system play out and all that thing. Like, and there's 2 sides. Maybe you're thinking that. Here's all you need to know. People that are mandated reporters charged with keeping your kids safe shirked that responsibility, period. And then those same people, many of them in that school board, in that community, are lecturing everyone about things like systemic racism that occurs in that town, where when they were in the positions of power and they had the ability to try to protect victims, they dropped the ball. And so every single person listening to this story should be shocked by what's happening. But if you're in the Williamsport School District, how do you feel safe sending your kids there? How could you possibly, knowing the people tasked with the safety of your children in the most heinous of things that could happen, sexual abuse, they turned a blind eye to it?
Well, not only that, that's not the worst part. That's not the worst part. Not even close. Todd, give me 30 seconds of the lunacy that you have had to endure in the last 2 years on a case of sexual assault that has video evidence, and then juxtapose that to the same lunacy that would have occurred if you didn't have video evidence.
So if there's no video in this case, it's he said in both instances. So the videos
and
make
the story would have died.
Right? The videos in these cases tell the story better than anybody can write it, talk about it on the radio, share it with friends. these videos are compelling and disturbing. And the reaction to these videos
it never happened.
has been appalling.
Right.
When you have a chief detective say, well, it was a prank and we're not going to send the video to Myrtle Beach, we're not going to do that. He's a mandated reporter. He's also an uncle at Little League. Are you kidding me?
For all those people out there who are rabid Little League fans and supporters, does anybody know what Steve Keener's position on sexual assault is? Anybody know? I'll take a guess. It is his one overriding concern. Singly, the one most important overriding concern, other than supporting Marxists. But I cannot believe that they would stand aside and not act on people in their charge being part of a cover-up of incidents that abused children on their watch while they were mandated reporters. And that's really the heart of the story, is that mandated reporters are now trying to cover their ass and lie and say that nothing happened. There was no there. And Todd is a liar. Yet there's video evidence. Is that a new, Robert, on a scale of 1 to 10? I know that 2020 is a crazy year, but that's insane, isn't it? There's video evidence and they're still denying it.
Well, that's just, there's a reason, right? They denied it initially because they had connections and they didn't want, they had connections to the.
It was never going to get out, right?
Right. They didn't want it to get out. And their number one concern, as in most cases, what you'll find, just like the situation I was telling you with the debate community, the people that scream the loudest about injustices, about judging other people for their perceived moral deficits, many times those people are covering something up. And what we see here is it's all good to virtue signal about caring about people and protecting the underprivileged, but when you actually have the personal responsibility to do so, oftentimes that comes with making difficult decisions. If it was easy to be virtuous, everyone would do it. It's not.
Right.
Oftentimes it's not the easiest path to go down. And so they drop the ball, and now their number one concern is, oh my goodness, they're not concerned. Like Todd, in your interactions with these people, has one of them ever looked at you and said, geez, I hope I didn't do the wrong thing. I hope that someone didn't suffer abuse because of my poor decision making. Has anyone thought that? It seems evident to me that their number one reaction to you is coming from a place of, I hope I don't get caught. I hope this isn't bad for me.
Right.
Their own district statement didn't include the word victim or victims.
And it took almost 2 years to come out with a statement that was as vanilla as you could possibly imagine, and
completely inaccurate. But we can get into that here in a minute too.
So give us the players real quick. On the start with the players on the school side, and so give us the details as to what happened. What were the conditions? Tell us about how you found out, or how you became aware of it, and what you started to do, and what are some of the salient facts of the case as you started peeling back the onion.
Summer 2018, the family of John Doe 1 reached out to me because they felt like they weren't getting anywhere with the school. They weren't getting anywhere with law enforcement. They wanted an advocate for them that could tell their story. And additionally, maybe find out some information that nobody else could. So the investigation, undertaken by me, exclusively by me, by the way,
when you say that, you're talking about as a media person.
Yeah, as a journalist. Yeah, as a media member. So I started to use the right to know law, reached out to local law enforcement for comments, and was starting to get stonewalled. And normally when that happens...
Tell people what the right to know law is. Just a quick 10-second overview.
So the Pennsylvania Right to Know law allows a requester to seek documents and or information, but predominantly documents from school districts, from public bodies, government agencies, on how they do what they do. And there's any number of exceptions to getting information.
It's a transparency law.
But generally speaking, if you request a document in regard to a governing body or a school district doing business, you're pretty much entitled to it, generally and broadly speaking. There are any number of carve-outs and exceptions that it would take a whole nother show to do that, to go through the right to know law. But generally speaking, records are presumed to be public.
Okay. So what happened when you started digging?
I got stonewalled.
Okay. What happened after that?
I kept digging.
So what was the breakthrough?
And I'm still digging 2 years later.
What was the breakthrough?
Well, the first salient breakthrough was the fact that I got Sean McCann's cell phone records, call logs, and Rainey Zangara's call logs.
Who is Sean McCann?
Current athletic director and an athletic director at the time of the trip. Rainey Zangara is a former administrator. He now works at Penn College.
Okay.
He was an assistant coach on the baseball team. The right to know officer actually put him in Myrtle Beach, according to her affidavit, when in fact he wasn't in Myrtle Beach, according to his statement, meaning Zangara.
So they can't
but
get
what
the
I
facts
didn't
straight.
get, right? What I didn't get was Brandon Pardo's phone in the same window.
Who was Brendan
Which
Pardo?
struck me as odd, because Brandon Pardo is the high school head principal who was on the trip, had a nephew in the room at the time of the John Doe 1 criminal sexual misconduct incident, and for whatever reason, I've never been able to garner his phone.
Okay. Where was he when the alleged attack took place?
In Myrtle Beach.
Where in Myrtle Beach?
Allegedly off-site, not staying at the team hotel.
Who else was with him?
Multiple other people.
Okay. And so with respect to any supervisory positions, personnel, who do you know for sure was at the hotel supervising these kids?
We don't know who was at the hotel supervising the kids, because other than the coaching staff that was on the trip, head coach, assistant coach, volunteer coaches, there was no room list, and there were no additional adult chaperones. That's been codified in an affidavit from the Williamsport Area School District.
All right. So they're not supplying a room list to you.
Correct.
So if you couldn't get a hold of your son because his phone died, and you reached out to the coach, and you asked him what the room number was so you could call him directly at the hotel line, the coach, they're saying, wouldn't be able to tell you because they didn't have a room list.
That is what their testimony is in writing for the past 2 years.
And they're also saying that they had no specific chaperones for the trip of basically how many kids are on the team?
40, roughly 40.
So there were no chaperones for 40 kids at a hotel in Myrtle Beach, 700 miles away from Williamsport.
And the room numbers that I've obtained in this story, they were scattered from top to bottom of that hotel.
So they weren't all on one floor.
And it's not a 3-story
or all on
hotel
2
either.
floors.
It's a huge hotel.
So we don't know who was at the hotel supervising these kids when these attacks happened. They were unsupervised, and the district admits it.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. So what happens next?
So the digging has continued.
So when did you find out? So tell us the first salient thing that you found out through your right to know requests.
Well, the first salient thing that I found out was the video existed. The district attorney's office had it.
Right.
And when I confronted the detective who investigated the case and asked him point blank, I said, well, are you going to forward the video to Myrtle Beach? Well, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Those are
the first major break in the case.
Right. Those are famous words. No, we're not going to do that.
As a mandated reporter and an officer of the court, we are not going to do that.
So that must have been very shocking. So tell us who Fred Holland is.
Fred Holland is the Williamsport Area School District solicitor.
Okay, and what did he do that also broke the case for you?
So when I asked the solicitor about this incident, he responded to me in 2018 and said at the end of the near the end of the school year, 2017, 2018, indecent and inappropriate behavior happened with a baseball player in Myrtle Beach. That was his context of inappropriate and indecent in an email.
In an email. So you have an email that says that the solicitor said that there was indecent and inappropriate behavior. Is
right.
Indecent in this context a legal word?
Yes.
Okay.
Indecent has a legal criminal meaning.
Okay. So that basically spurred you to write a story sometime in August, correct?
Yeah, August of 2018, in and around the time Little League World Series was opening or closing.
Mm-hmm.
And Terry Muchler, who was the former head of the Open Records Office, came on board and handled the open records and right to know law appeals for me. And the district agreed to mediation.
What makes Terry also a seminal figure in this story? She wrote the right to know law in Pennsylvania.
Terry used to run the Open Records Office. She was the executive director, formed it, helped form the law. I mean, this is a person of exemplary credentials.
Wrote the law. She wrote the right to know law in Pennsylvania. All right. So you have a heavy hitter on your side besides you.
Correct.
Okay. Tell us a 30-second overview of that story in August.
So the Millionaire Mayhem story in August outlines the broad strokes of the case that we've just talked about, with the players that are involved, from the adults, right? The school members, the administration, the investigation that they claim that they ran, Chief Detective Weber, his inability to send the video in real time to Myrtle Beach. And what it led to in September was me calling Myrtle Beach to say, have you seen this story? Because in my wildest dreams, gentlemen, I never thought, I get it if Weber's not going to call Myrtle Beach. You'd never think that the school district would not notify Myrtle Beach. They hadn't.
Can I just real quick, because I see people asking my chat, if you're coming in late, the original story was there is video of multiple players being sexually assaulted by multiple players. And just the bare bones of the story is, imagine that a team, multiple people inappropriately sexually assault someone. They videotaped it. They shared the video of that. And then when they got back to school, they were basically allegedly instructed to delete that video. So this is a cover up of groups of people hazing with a sexual assault a few victims. That's just a
correct. But moreover, the overarching point to your listeners that are following us on YouTube, and thank you very much for your support. The context that you guys need to understand with respect to this case is that everybody knew what happened in Myrtle Beach. And because they were so confident that nothing would get out, they never thought that anyone would report it until May 18th, when someone did. That sent shockwaves amongst all of them and started a campaign of coercion to silence these kids by threatening them to not play baseball that season or ever again in their high school careers. So the short-term coercion worked to keep these people silent. And these parents of these kids who had kids on the team silent. The district is denying that they knew at all until May 18th. Todd has evidence that they knew then. They knew at that moment and did nothing. That's what makes this story horrifying.
And then on top of that, Todd is the only journalist that was covering this. He has been attacked by the very people that have shirked their responsibilities and covered up this assault. Routinely, he's been attacked. And some of the people that are in charge of the Williamsport School District have then proceeded to go out and virtue signal about, oh, we believe Black Lives Matter. We believe in systemic racism. So when it came to actually protecting the least privileged of us, children that were sexually assaulted, they did worse than nothing. They covered it up, and they attacked people trying to expose it. But then they're telling you they're superior to you because, and this is part of the interest to me, this is what we see. This is what the racial grievance narrative, the critical race theory that leads to things like Black Lives Matter, this is what it truly allows. It allows those that abused the least privileged amongst us to get away with that abuse because all they have to use is cheap words and say things like, Black Lives Matter. So it doesn't matter that I said on an administration that covered up for the sexual assault of children. Because I said Black Lives Matter. That's all that matters. That makes me a good person, right? Now do you start to see where we could see these stories in our small towns of the devastation that critical race cultural Marx theory has led to, that's led to Black Lives Matter?
So you called Myrtle Beach. And what did Myrtle Beach say?
Todd.
Yes, if you could state a question again, because the connection to Robert was a little sideways there for a second.
So you called Myrtle Beach. It's 12:51. You called Myrtle Beach, and what did they say?
Myrtle Beach police had no idea what I was talking about.
Wow.
None.
Wow.
Till they read the story. Then they started making phone calls, and they said, and it's on tape, part 13 of the story. If you want to go look it up, talkwilliamsport.com. That's talkwilliamsport.com. Just search baseball story, and the whole link will show up. And on a phone conversation with Detective AC at the Myrtle Beach Police Department, Detective Porter's in the background, they asked Brandon Pardo, why are we getting the runaround? You're the principal. You know these kids. Brandon Pardo, I think it would be best if you talk to Agent Weber. Talk to Agent Weber.
For 6 minutes. He gave the police department in Myrtle Beach the runaround for 6 minutes when he was pointedly asked 3 different times, is there anything that you could tell us to help us? What did Brandon Pardo not tell the Myrtle Beach Police Department?
1, that he was on the trip. 2, that his nephew was in the room. And 3, he ran a sham investigation. Sham is my word.
And what was the result of that investigation?
That the videographer and alleged perpetrator were told to sit out the state playoffs the first week of June.
And
there were some other things educationally that the alleged perp had to do to go to different webinars and different classes and this type of deal. But it's been proven that they were never brought before the school board for any kind of disciplinary hearing, let alone expulsion, which is all laid out in the student handbook, code of conduct handbook. That's their own protocols. The school district didn't even follow their own protocols when it came to a sexual assault.
Why do you think that happened?
Because it was a baseball player.
But over the overarching idea of why that happened.
Okay, well,
because they were covering it up.
There's going to be a part 19 of this story. And I've uncovered emails and exchanges between any number of the people we've already mentioned and a criminal defense attorney named George Lepley. George Lepley is a longtime baseball coach in the West End baseball program here in the Williamsport area.
Which is the league after Little League, age-wise.
George Lepley's grandson was on this team and on this trip. George Lepley's daughter was on this trip. She's his paralegal. George Lepley's son-in-law, who's also been a West End coach, was on this trip as well.
Right. So George was
George
in
Lepley's
Myrtle Beach.
son-in-law works for Little League.
Right. And George was in Myrtle Beach at the time of the incident.
Stayed in the team hotel.
So we can confirm that he was at the hotel.
Correct.
Likely the only mandatory reporter that was there that the kids could have gotten a hold of when this broke, because someone went searching for somebody because this happened, right?
Okay.
So,
haven't confirmed that yet, but he did stay in the hotel. I can at least give you that as a confirmation.
Well, I mean, you're a human being. This happened. It broke. You're looking for teachers. You're looking for adults. You're looking for a coach to go tell them what happened. Who do they run into? We don't know. There's no room list. We don't know where the coaches are. The head coach would not answer the phone.
Right.
So, George Lepley is a criminal defense attorney, and he is now representing in the timeline the perpetrator that committed these crimes. Correct?
Todd froze up, perhaps.
Todd froze
Okay,
up.
I'm back.
Yeah. Did you hear what I just said?
You said they went looking for somebody and then it broke up.
Okay. So George Lepley is representing the perpetrator that committed these acts. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that leads us to the letter. Tell us about the letter.
So there has been a theory postulated by me for 2 years as part of this cover-up. The only reason everything stopped on June 5th was there was a veiled threat or a...
That's when the investigation ended. After it
Right.
started on June or March or...
on May 18th on the Childline Call, right?
Well, the
So
investigation didn't start there. The investigation started on the 30th or the 31st, correct?
Well, I'll get into that in just a second.
Okay.
So the Childline Call is made May 18th. The district statement says it was immediately referred to law enforcement. Law enforcement immediately called the school, brought it to their attention. Okay? This is the context of what we're talking about. The district solicitor in their statement that they put out said, the district said the solicitor gave the principal permission to do the investigation. Okay? That's the background. My theory has been for 2 years. The only reason this investigation stopped on June 5th, 2018, in the meeting with the alleged perpetrator's family, is a threat was made.
Correct.
A threat of
A
legal
threat made-
action
A threat made
stopped
to them.
everything.
Right. A threat made to the family of the victim.
To the district.
Okay.
A legal threat of litigation from the alleged perpetrator's family made to the district through their lawyer stopped everything.
Gotcha.
That was my theory for 2 years. So then there came word of a letter. Okay?
And this is only
Authored by
recently.
George Lepley.
This is only
that was
recently,
either-
right?
Yes. That was either delivered prior to the June 5th meeting or brought to the June 5th meeting. So I asked the right to know folks that we're in conversation with. There's a letter. You need to produce it. We can go all the way to the Office of Open Records to get this thing, but it exists. You want to
What did they-
redact it? Go right ahead and redact it, but
What'd
there's
they
the
say?
existence of a letter.
What they say?
Let's look into it.
No,
We'll
no,
get
no.
back
They
to you.
said that's not what they said. They said that we don't know of any letter. Right? That's what they
Yeah, the
initially
lawyer
said.
that's handling this is now a special counsel lawyer that they've brought in under a different contract. And this lawyer said to me, I'm unaware of what you're talking about. Let me check into it.
So what does that context mean? That the district is lying to their own legal
attorney.
counsel.
Okay.
Right.
So I called the attorney that allegedly proffered this letter, and I said, George, I'm aware of the existence of a letter you wrote either end of May or beginning of June.
Right. Now you
threatening
had
the
the
district.
letter in your hand before you called them.
Correct? What's that?
You have this letter in your hand
I
before
have
you called
I have
George
proof-
Lepley, the author
I have-
of that letter.
I have proof of the existence of the letter.
Oh my God.
Okay. George then says to me, there's no letter. I didn't write that letter. There's no letter. To that effect is what he tells me. By
you hearing this,
3:30
Rob?
that afternoon, I had the letter. By 3:30 that afternoon, the district provided me the letter. Now, it's all kind of redacted, but I know what the letter says.
So George Lepley lied to you when you asked him point blank if he wrote the letter, and he said there's no such letter.
Correct.
The attorney for the district didn't even know there was a letter and would have never known if you didn't say anything and asked for it and demanded it, correct?
Now, listen, that afternoon, I emailed George Lepley back, and I said, George, I'm now in receipt of the letter from the district. You said it didn't exist. Do you have any comment to clarify your position on the non-existence of this letter?
What do you say?
He has yet to respond.
I see. Okay.
Fred Holland has subsequently said that my characterization of George Lepley being involved in this case didn't stop the district from punishing the alleged perpetrator or anybody else involved. I wholeheartedly disagree with that assertion.
Yeah. 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 This is so.
Stay tuned for part 19 and part 20.
So give our listeners an idea of what happened when the district attorney came into office in January and started investigating this. Tell us what's happening on the legal side, and then tell us real quick what's happening on the victim's family side with respect to litigation.
So District Attorney Ryan Gardner and Chief Detective Simpler visited with the family of John Doe 1 within 10 days of taking office.
In January of this year.
In January of this year. And because that family was seeking legal counsel, they never were able to interview John Doe 1. Then COVID hit. And then Gardner's own investigation and Simpler's own investigation turned up enough of conflict of interest. They referred it to the Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania.
Gotcha.
That's where the case stands right now. Myrtle Beach has the case wide open as well. They've actually referred it up to their major crimes division. So that also refutes the idea that Myrtle Beach did a look at it and they came back with nothing. That refutes what George Lepley said. It's kind of hard to run an investigation when you're not privy to all the facts.
Right.
So they're running it wide open. The AG's office is running this case wide open.
What is the family of the victim doing?
On the civil side, I don't have this firsthand, gentlemen, but just look at what happened at Penn State. Those victims, some of whom waited until the Attorney General's office did their due diligence, did the criminal side, and then they filed civil action. Or in the interim, filed civil action, then it was stayed until the outcome of the criminal side. And we all know how that story played out.
The family of the victim hired lawyers. Who are they?
Klein and Spector out of Philadelphia.
And these are the same people that got very large settlements from Penn State and the Vatican, correct?
Yeah, they represented Tim Piazza in the fraternity hazing case. They also represented multiple Sandusky victims. And they have represented any number of clients in the pedophile priest cases.
This is the worst baseball story in the history of baseball, correct?
It's the worst I've seen since the founding of Little League, to be honest with you. The depth and breadth of people that are involved in this to cover this up is breathtaking.
Centered around our elites, correct?
Yeah,
it's
and
our moral betters that are
for what?
Like Rob says, it's our moral betters that are the ringleaders of telling a story that says nothing ever happened, nothing to see here. Todd's a liar.
It was a prank. The detective called it a prank. How do you go from a prank
that's fundamentally
to indecent and inappropriate behavior to criminal sexual misconduct?
But that a prank means that something happened. They said nothing happened. Is that too tough?
They're still saying it.
I'm being too tough, right?
No, they're still saying it.
Why is Carlos such a jerk?
That I'm blowing it out of proportion. There's no there
right.
there. The Attorney General's not going to do anything. It's unfathomable. Final
statements, Todd.
Just, part 19, and then there's also stuff on Jennifer Lake Wokebagon Part 5 will probably be coming out later this week. There's new tape on the George Floyd arrest, and it doesn't play well, folks, to the BLM movement of the new body cam footage that's come out. And again, what happened to him is abhorrent. He should still be here. He shouldn't be deceased. But the narrative that's being pushed by the media is not exactly what happened. And where have we seen that or heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
The other one is we're looking forward to the answer of the PIAA. And I had asked this the day that they punted when I was on that conference call with the PIAA. And I think I asked this, what was the downside of coming out and telling the governor straight up, we're playing. You want to shut it down? Shut it down. We're playing. What was their downside?
None.
Then it would be on the governor and the Secretary of Health to shut down sports. But remember, we're trying to go back to school.
Final thoughts, Robert.
So, yeah, I think that listening to this Myrtle Beach story, understand, I'm not from Williamsport like my two co-hosts. And to me, this story is unbelievably disgusting and fascinating at the same time. Because, again, what I keep coming back to is this story is unique in that it's so horrific. And like Carlos said, one of the worst stories we've heard in the baseball community. But it's also the story of towns all across America and how the corrupt in charge don't care about the average person. Yet they'll yell and scream about how moral they are. And it makes me think of other things. Remember, the people in Williamsport, some of the people involved in that school are talking about systemic racism. They're talking about hypothetical racist things that could happen in the city of Williamsport while they're ignoring real sexual abuse that they helped cover up for. And they feel that they're morally superior to you. And it reminds me of other things that we see that come from this movement, where you see people that say in Black Lives Matter that they say, oh, we care so much about Black lives. Yet how many of them have spoke up about the Black life that was killed, the 16-year-old child that was killed in Chaz, the autonomous zone that was created by Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and had their police force execute? The audio shows not only did they shoot him, they then said, oh, he's still breathing, and put more bullets in them. That was called the Summer of Love by the Democrat Seattle Matter. And has Black Lives Matter spoke up about it? Has your Democratic politician spoke up about it? No, they're busy lecturing you. Michael Tracy's a Democratic reporter who's been getting grief from the Democrats. He's someone who despises Donald Trump. He personally went and traveled city to city all across this country and said it is one of the most shocking things that he's ever seen. The devastation that normal people of all colors have talked about, how these riots have devastated their community with almost no media coverage. None at all. And he's being attacked because he decided that this was an important story to cover. The people that are yelling at you and telling you that you don't care about Black lives or you're a racist because you disagree with this movement, they're the people that don't care about Black lives. They don't care about the Black lives that have been devastated through the riots. They don't care about the Black lives that will be devastated if we enact the horrible policies that Black Lives Matter wants, such as dismantling the structures of the nuclear family, defunding the police, which is already in New York City led to 177% uptick in violent shootings in 1 month, in the month of July, compared to July of 2019. It's the people that tell you, you have to care about grandma. That's why you have to give up all of your rights. That's why you have to lock down, while they themselves put COVID patients in with your grandmother and killed her. And yet they claim to be morally superior. So the lesson my final note today is just this. Don't be shamed by these people. I decided with my channel, and all of us decided to be public with the roles we go in, and it's difficult. I have family members that I really care for that are now attacking me on Facebook. I have friends that I really care for that are attacking me on Facebook. And it's time to stand up and start fighting back and say, no, it's not that we don't care about the underprivileged. It's that we're not going to support a movement that believes that we need to be separated racially, use that as an excuse to attack people of a certain color. Remember, have you heard any of these people that care about racism? Any of them comment on the Department of Justice showing that Yale has had discriminatory practices against whites and Asians in their admissions progress? Have you heard your friends that talk about racism being bad? Have you heard them talk about that? Have you heard them talk about the riots that have devastated these poor inner city communities? They don't talk about any of that. And it's time to stop being silent in the face of their faux calls for moral superiority.
Thank you, guys. There's an idea that I think was floated by Aristotle that's called sympatheia. And sympatheia is the idea that we are all, as a people, mutually woven together. And if you follow that idea, that means that an injustice against one person is an injustice against all of us. What interests me most about the Myrtle Beach story here in Williamsport is that there was an injustice committed against a minor that was made more horrifying by the fact that the minor expected that he would be protected by the people who swore to protect him as A, mandatory reporters, B, coaches, and C, adults. And they failed. And they failed because the legacy of the Williamsport Baseball Millionaires baseball team, to be put in context, they thought that they were going to win the championship in 2018. That's how good they thought they were. Had to be protected. They threw one of their own, two of their own at least, under the bus to protect the legacy of what would have been a championship season. We are not the type of people that will permit that to stand. And it's just me, Robin, and Todd, and a couple of more people. The district attorney in Williamsport, a handful of law enforcement people, and one or two politicians, shockingly. And I say that shockingly because the people who are leading the charge against us are people that are elites. The supposedly the very best of the best of the best of the best in the city of Williamsport are the ones that are leading the charge to cover this up and to lie that on their watch there was a child that was sexually attacked. On their watch. And they want us to pay for it, and they want us to look away, and they want us to ignore it. We will never do that. That is not the America that raised us. Protect yourselves at all times, especially after the bell, because no one's coming to save you unless you stand up and push back on your own, for yourself, for your own, and the things you believe in. Your homework until next Saturday is to take the time and read the Declaration of Independence. There's going to be a quiz.
Carlos, there's a breaking news story that might be of interest to both of you.
Okay.
Tom Wolf has just requested that the mail-in voting deadline be pushed till after the election.
Of course it is. Of course it is. We need to keep all these balls in the air until we can have a fair shot or a good shot of removing the president. This is what it's all about. If you think that we haven't made up our minds yet as to what's going to happen in November, you're insane. We'll see you next week.